Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Scaling Done Right podcast. This podcast is supporting the book that I and Louis Cantella have written, which is called Scaling Done Right: How to Achieve Business Agility with Scrum at Scale and Make the Competition Irrelevant. So today we're going to talk a little bit about chapter 4 in the book, which is called Waste Truly is a Crime. And in it, we talk a little bit about the fact that we all always profess that we don't like waste in whatever form it may come, from plastic in the oceans to polluted air to waste at work in manufacturing, but also in knowledge work. And that while that is kind of normal, we all do it, I do it, you do it probably, it's really a big problem. Because there is a moral argument to be made that it's really not okay to be wasteful as long as we have real problems as a species. We have the climate crisis. We have a lot of children on the planet still going hungry. We have not become a multiplanetary species. And so there's really a lot of important work that still needs to be done that I at least tend to forget sometimes if I'm living in my cozy home in Berlin. But it's really a big problem, and we need to address it. When scaling Scrum, one of the huge issues is how to deal with the middle management. Because unfortunately, a lot of middle managers don't really have all that much to do. And that is not their fault. That's a remnant of the obsolete technology that they're using. So originally, these positions were not only necessary, they were very valuable. Back when we didn't have anything relating to Agile, when the only management technology available was that of command and control, top-down, waterfall, etc., all that stuff. When the technology was only that, you didn't have anything else, it actually made sense to have those people in middle management, because you had to find a way to communicate from the top manager to the worker what needed to be done. And think about the historical context of that. Back then, you usually had a factory and you had one very smart top manager who went to a university, who learned engineering or maybe business administration, and who actually knew how to get everything done and how to organize everything. And then the workers, who were they? They were usually farmers that, in the process of industrialization, came into the cities to work in factories. So they were not educated. They didn't know what the factory work was about. And you needed somebody, middle layer, to make sure that the work actually got done, that they got trained, that enforced discipline, etc. Today, we are in a completely different situation. Even the lowest of workers in a hierarchy are usually highly trained. If you just look at the person that's cleaning your teeth, do you know how much training went into becoming that person? If you're thinking about the person that is repairing your toilet, it takes a lot of training and a lot of knowledge and a lot of education to actually do that work. And now we're not even talking about the knowledge workers at the bottom of the org chart, right? I would actually argue that the situation has turned on its head, in the sense that often the people in an org chart that are on the lower part of it actually know more stuff than the person at the top. And that is because, well, the world has simply gotten too complex for one person to have the bandwidth to understand everything. It's simply impossible, especially in large organizations. No superhuman exists like that. Maybe apart from Elon Musk, but that's a different story. And so basically, you don't have that situation anymore that gave birth to those old management paradigms. And even worse, from their perspective, is that nobody wants to work like that anymore. And this is something that I also always bring out when talking to top managers about agile transformations is that you might not need to do agile because you are in a protected realm, but you won't find any new employees either. And that's a big issue, especially here in Germany, where we have comparatively few young people to old people. And so it's difficult to fill positions. And the young people, what are they saying? Well, we want to go where it's fun to work, right? They're still as ambitious and as diligent, but they're also kind of paying attention to where they work because they don't want to spend 40 years of their life in a job where they have zero empowerment and zero ability to make decisions on their own. So in that old paradigm, having a lot of middle managers made sense. It was a good call. But the reality is for us, it doesn't make any sense anymore to have as many middle managers. That doesn't mean we don't need them anymore. Absolutely not. But we don't need as many. And this becomes a problem if you start a transformation. Because what can happen is you have a top-down transformation. The top management says, yes, we'll do agile. I'm all behind it. We are all behind it. Let's do it. They delegate it. It takes a couple of months. Then top management's attention goes to another topic. And then the middle managers will kill the transformation. So this, in fact, is not a new situation. Whenever you have an old technology that required the input of a lot of workers, in this case, middle managers, and a new technology comes along that makes those workers not needed anymore, you're going to have resistance. It's the same whether you look at coal mines, whether you look at, well, basically every profession that's ever been disrupted, right? Who likes to be disrupted? Nobody does, that's for sure. But at the same time, we can't just leave people working on something that's not needed anymore, right? So the example that we use in the book is that of horse carriage men. If you are working at a logistics company and you have a lot of horse carriages that are distributing whatever wares you are distributing, and a new technology in form of the car or of a modern semi is coming along, then that kind of sucks for the horse carriage men because they will probably lose their job. From the view of society or from the view of the company, you kind of have to make the change, right? Because at that point, distributing wares via horse carriage is not a value-adding activity anymore. It's just waste, right? It's too slow, it's too manpower intensive, it's too costly, etc., etc. So how do you deal with that? Well, sometimes people make a compromise, right? They say, well, we have analyzed it, and one of the parts that make the semi much more efficient than the horse carriage is that they have navigation. So you buy a GPS and put it on the horse cart, right? And it's true, that's an improvement, but it kind of doesn't solve the problem. Then you take it a step further and you'll say, okay, so then let's keep the horse carts, but also buy a couple of semis, right? And that's a solution, that's a step in the right direction, but it brings about new problems. For example, that because the horse carts are so inefficient by today's standards, the semi-drivers actually have to work twice as hard to compensate for their lack of productivity. And this is exactly the same situation with middle management. We don't need it anymore, or not as much anymore, because we delegate a lot of authority into the teams themselves, and we harmonize the leadership's intent better with what the teams are working on, so that this middle step isn't needed anymore. And so you could go through all these steps and, put the GPS on a horse carriage and then have both systems in parallel, etc., etc. But in the end, the managers have to go. And I don't say this lightly at all. I think this is from an agile coach perspective, that's a daunting task, but that's not even relevant. It's relevant for the people that are actually working in those positions. And we think that people sometimes make a big mistake here because they'll rightly say we don't need those middle managers anymore, but then they want to get rid of them, which is just ludicrous. I mean, these are some of your highest trained employees. usually employees that have been with the company for a long time. And what you should do is try to find new avenues for them, how they can participate in an agile company. And some people you will never reach. They will sabotage the transformation. They will be completely against it, and it will not be possible for you to have them work in the new organization. And if they prefer to work in a hierarchical organization, then that's okay too, right? They can leave and work at that other place. But what I think is most important is to actually help and guide those middle managers, support them through training, through mentoring, through professional coaching, for example, and by providing them avenues of changing their position so that they can actually still contribute to the company. And often, especially if you have an organization that has a lot of employees, a lot of middle managers, maybe too many middle managers, you'll see that they maybe have a control span of 2 employees, right? And so they already know that they are not true managers, right? If I only have 2 employees, I'm not a real manager, right? And so having that people join one of the teams is just totally fine. And they know it. And if you make it easy for them to join, for example, by not forcing them to take a pay cut, that's going to be no problem. So what we are asking you to do is keep in mind that suddenly you have this problem that every society has every 10 years at least, that you're going to have a part of your company, of your organization, of your country where people aren't needed in that position anymore because of technological change. And you have that in agile transformations. And if you don't pay attention to this, this is going to derail the transformation. So be aware of it. And please understand that what we want to get rid of are the positions, not the managers themselves. We don't want to get rid of the people. We want to get rid of the positions because they are representing waste. And we want to keep the managers and bring them into new positions where they can actually contribute under the new company operating system. One word of warning, however, be careful not to seed, especially in the beginning, not to seed Scrum positions with managers. Because if they are not open to the change, you will put them in exactly the positions to sabotage that transformation. So be very mindful, especially in the beginning, who you put into which position, because you might be sabotaging yourself at that point. All right. So this was episode 4 of the Scaling Done Right podcast. If you want to read more about this topic, then please pick up the book. You can get it wherever you usually buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, etc. If you need help in your transformation or you would like to be trained in Scrum or Scrum at Scale, please reach out to me, Gary on teamflow.net or Lewis on ruskera.com, and see you next time.